Has anybody here ever wanted to travel? I know that some of us have maybe some plans in the future to travel when we have our own income. When we are seniors, we are able to, some of us have the opportunity to take a senior trip, and maybe some of us have decided, some of us are thinking about it, deciding where we want to go. Of course, after when you're a senior, you have also a decision to go on and study or go straight to having a job. Either way, every single one of us is going to have our own income at some point in our life. Having our own income gives us the freedom of spending our own money. Spending our own money means that we can make our own decisions. We can make a decision about buying a house, a car, and that's also kind of the same thing with traveling. If you want to travel when you're older, you just have to make sure you have the right time and the right money to do it. You also have to make decisions like how much you want to spend on your trip, how long you want to be on your trip, and with the decision of seeing where you want to go, you can choose a place where you just want to relax on the beach. Maybe you want to go up to the mountains like Alaska. Maybe you want to, like I said, the beach in Hawaii. Or maybe you want to go to a city. A city that I'll be talking about today is New York City. Now, New York City is one of my favorite places. It's probably top on my bucket list, to be honest. And I really liked seeing the pictures, seeing the videos of it. I just think it's really cool. So that's what I've decided to do my speech on today. So talking about New York City, first let's go into New York as a state a whole. New York became a state back in 1776 after the American Revolution. It was the 11th state in history. Now going back to New York City, some of us may know it as a place that's pretty populated, pretty crowded, we'll say. It has a lot of tourists that come every year, and these tourists come from all around the world. They come to see events like New Year's Eve ball drop. They come to see the Thanksgiving Macy's parade that happens every November. Now, there's also a lot of attractions here. Of course, there's a lot of historical sites, a lot of memorials, such as the 9/11 Memorial, the Empire State Building, all of that. Now, there's not only tourists here, there's people that also live here. People here kind of have a rough life because if you didn't know, New York is one of the most expensive places to live in the United States. And it can be top 10 in the whole world as well. Now, Insider did a research on the people who live here, and they found that 1.4 million people live in poverty in New York City every single day. So if you put together all the tourists and all the people who live here, you get a whole bundle of people. Now, everyone needs to get from one place to another, so with a lot of people, there's a lot of cars, a lot of subways, there comes a lot of traffic. Now, I want you to imagine this. It's your first time being in New York City. You're looking around, maybe you have headphones in, just kind of chilling, looking around, walking maybe through one of the popular neighborhoods like Brooklyn, for example. And you go through a sidewalk, or a crosswalk, and you just take 1 second to just look around and just admire how pretty it looks, but then you get hit by a bus. Now, this might seem like a pretty weird experience, but it's actually something that can happen to you. And you might be laying there on the ground thinking, well, is somebody gonna help me up? No, people are honking at you because you're blocking traffic. And someone is probably getting mad at you because now they're late to their 9-to-5 office job. And this can happen to you, to be honest. So if you wanna avoid the traffic, if you wanna avoid all of that, you can take the subway. And the subway seems like a pretty reasonable choice. You don't have to deal with the expenses of owning a car, such as gas and car insurance. So you decide to take the subway every day, and it seems nice because a subway card is $173 per month, which accumulates to a couple $1,000s a year. But of course, you don't have to pay for gas for the subway, which is pretty nice, except the subways here in New York City tend to be super dirty. Now, they are infested with just disgusting stuff. And that's kind of the expectation of everyone, that everyone's just kind of piled here and it becomes dirty over time. So I talked about tourists and why they come here, and now you're wondering okay, they come to some events, they come to tourist attractions. So I want to dive deeper into it. One of my favorite tourist attractions that they have, or one of their favorite buildings, one of my favorite buildings, is the Empire State Building. Now, the Empire State Building is a skyscraper. It is one of the biggest ones that they have there. And it's beautiful because you can do a lot of things inside of there. If you would like to spend the night inside of the Empire State Building, you can for $1,500 a night, which is pretty expensive, not gonna lie. And you can also buy tickets to go up to one of the highest points and look around the city. And if you've ever looked at a picture or video online of New York City, it's pretty common for some of them to be taken up top of the Empire State Building. Now, the Empire State Building, its construction started in 1940, and an article done by Evan Andrews on History.com tells us that it was actually constructed in record time. It was made in under 20 months, which is pretty good for like that huge building. And another one that I want to talk about is one that's pretty common. It's probably one that some of you guys have heard, such as in history class or something like that, and that is the Statue of Liberty. Now, the Statue of Liberty was constructed, or it was kind of gifted to us in 1876 after, it was kind of like a friendship kind of gift from the French. And there's a lot of people who come here. This is one of the most popular tourist attractions, with over 3.5 million people visiting this place every single year. And it's honestly, doing my research on this, I've actually thought that this is one of the most inexpensive places to come here. An adult ticket costs $40, and it's about a $20 ferry ride from New York City itself to the island. My last one I want to talk about is Central Park. So Central Park ultimately is just a park, but it's one of the coolest things I've ever researched on. Basically in the 1800s, New York City passed a law where over 400 acres of land was going to become just like a public park, and it is ginormous. Like, it's just kind of like a rectangular park in the middle of New York City, but it is so pretty. There's a lot of things to do inside of it, such as there's a farmer's market, there are strawberry fields, there are a bunch of flower fields, and honestly, you can just spend time away from the city and just feel the nature in this place, and that's why I think it's just super cool. So you might be asking yourself, you know, I gave you a lot of information on tourist attractions on New York City itself, and you might think like, why did I choose it? Out of all the things I could have chosen to do my topic on, I decided New York City because for a long time, I've honestly really just liked this whole city. If you haven't noticed, Ryrie is a super small town. If you want to go somewhere for lunch, it's kind of the same 3 places you want to go. It's the same people you've grown up with, and as of someone who has lived here their whole life, I know what that feels like. I know how that is. And I just feel like New York City, since it's such a big city, if I were to live there, I was able to do something every single day. I was able to meet people every single day, and I think that would be just such a new and cool experience. There's also an experience that I want to share, which my family took a trip up to Minnesota to go visit some family. I was around 10, 12 maybe, and we were driving up to Minnesota, and we had about 30 minutes left in the car ride. And the city that I'm talking about in Minnesota is Minneapolis, Minnesota. It is the capital of Minnesota. It's pretty big. And I remember taking like a 15-minute power nap and waking up, and we were just getting into the city, and I just remember looking outside and seeing the most amazing sky view I've ever seen. It was the prettiest time to ever look at a bunch of buildings because it was just so pretty, and the sunset was happening, and everything was just gorgeous. And I just feel like if I were able to have that experience again, I don't know what I would do. I just feel like it would be amazing to be able to live that every single day. And now, you know, I talked about the history. There's a bunch more history on New York City that I didn't uncover, along with a lot of tourist attractions. There's not only 3, there's a lot more. There's a lot more memorials, a lot more historical sites. Everything, since it's just such a big city, there's so much about it that I didn't really talk about today, but it's definitely something that I suggest doing more research on. And I hope that everyone learned something new today, and I hope that this inspired you to maybe travel to New York someday. And I'll leave off a quote saying, "Between living and dreaming, there's one place, and that's New York City." Thank you.